Did you know that drag culture shares a history with African American emancipation? So I only learned about this when I watched this TED Talk by Channing Gerard Joseph. Now I thought it was really interesting, so I wanted to share some of the things that he said with you. So Channing is a writer and a journalist, and he's been recognized worldwide for the research that he's done about William Dorsey Swann. Now Swann was a formerly enslaved black person who became the earliest known American queer activist, and he was also the earliest known self-described drag queen. Now that's kind of a lot to take in, so let's explore. So Channing outlines the connection between drag culture and African American emancipation by looking at William Dorsey Swann. Swann was born into slavery just before the Civil War, and in the 1880s, when he was probably in his 20s, he moved to Washington, D.C. to find work to support his family. And I'm just going to play you a quick clip from the TED Talk.
In Washington, he found the Emancipation Day Parade, an enormous annual celebration commemorating the end of slavery in the U.S. Capitol. The highlights of the parade were called queens, beautiful crowned black women who personified African Americans' newfound freedom. The Queens of Emancipation Day so inspired Swann that he adopted the title queen for himself at the secret dance that he and his friends called a drag.
So we can see the way that Swann was so inspired by the queens that he saw at this parade that he adopted the title queen for himself. Now Channing notes that this term queen is important for two reasons. Firstly, it shows that Swann had an honoured place in his community. Secondly, it's one of the earliest positive terms that queer people had to describe themselves. So he says that terms like transgender and non-binary did not exist at this time. Now words like gay, lesbian and bisexual did exist in the English language, but they had very different meanings back then to what they have today. And what I find really interesting is that those words were not used to self-identify. Now, Channing makes a really interesting point when he says that sometimes it can be really difficult not to use our modern terms to describe people from the past. Now, Channing explains that the reason that this is so dangerous is that if we use modern terms with modern meanings to think about people from the past, we fail to consider the way and respect the way that they would have thought about themselves. I think it's really interesting to consider the way that our vocabulary has changed throughout time and what this means for how we think and talk about ourselves and the world around us. Now, queer drag is mainstream, from Paris is Burning to Pose and RuPaul's Drag Race. Channing notes that anyone who participates in or enjoys watching drag competitions is recognizing a century-and-a-half-long celebration of African American emancipation. I think conversations like this one really make you wonder how many more stories like this have been erased from the historical record. I think it's really awesome that now with social media we have the capacity to learn together and to share these stories. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'd love to hear any other topics you'd like us to cover in the future.